All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tracking one of the most insane technological leaps in human history, the evolution of mobile phones from incredibly heavy elite luxury items into the proactive digital assistants we rely on today. It's an absolute technological revolution that happened in the blink of an eye, completely rewiring how we interact with the world.
$12,500. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. That is the inflation-adjusted cost of the very first commercial mobile phone released back in 1983. Today, we might complain about dropping $1,000 on a flagship device, but back then, you were paying the equivalent of over 12 grand for a giant piece of plastic that could literally only make phone calls. No apps, no camera, just a dial tone. So, to figure out how we got from that absurdly expensive paperweight to the AI powerhouses we're expecting by 2026, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover 1. The birth of the brick. 2. First steps to smart. 3. A camera in your pocket. 4. The Crackberry generation. 5. The AI smartphone era. And finally 6. The post-app future.
Let's kick things off at the very beginning. Section 1. The birth of the brick, the 1980s cell phone.
Meet the 1983 Motorola Dynatec 8000. This absolute unit weighed a massive 3 pounds and was roughly the size of a shoe. It barely fit into a briefcase, let alone a pocket. But after a decade of intense research following a 1973 prototype, this was the exact device that finally untethered us from our cars and living rooms, even if, carrying it around was essentially a minor workout.
I actually love this highly nostalgic quote from a Reddit user looking back at the device. They said, "Commonly known as the brick. My first mobile, it was indestructible. It also made an effective weapon." It really perfectly captures that heavy utilitarian, military-grade feel of early 80s hardware. It didn't care about looking sleek, it just cared about grabbing a wireless signal.
And to really put that exclusivity into perspective, the U.S. minimum wage in 1983 was just $3.35. That means a minimum wage worker would have to log 1,200 hours. That's about 7 months of full-time work without spending a single penny on food or rent, just to buy this one phone. It was the ultimate, undeniable status symbol. So, how did the industry transition from those bricks into something you'd actually want to carry? Section 2. First steps to smart, the 1990s revolution.
The 90s were just a decade of rapid-fire innovation. We had the first commercial phone in '83, sure, but then 1991 brings the 2G network, moving us from analog to digital. The very next year, 1992, a guy named Neil Papworth sends the world's first SMS text message. And by 1994, IBM starts asking a wild question. What if a phone could also be a computer?
Enter the IBM Simon. This was a visionary leap, essentially the great-grandfather of the modern smartphone. It combined phone calls with internet capabilities to try and solve the need for mobile email. But here's the catch. It could only stay alive for 60 short minutes, literally a 1-hour battery. Despite that abysmal battery life, it sold 50,000 units incredibly fast, simply because the sheer concept of checking email on the go in 1994 was totally mind-blowing.
By the turn of the millennium, mobile tech experienced a massive visual shift. Section 3, a camera in your pocket. Visual revolution.
110,000. That tiny figure is the total pixel count, just 0.11 megapixels, of the world's first fully integrated mobile camera. To frame that up, today we're casually shooting video and photos on sensors with tens of millions of pixels. But back in the year 2000, 110,000 pixels was all it took to change the entire trajectory of human communication forever. Despite that incredibly low resolution, the 74-gram Sharp JS-H04 was a total game changer. It was released exclusively in Japan for J-Phone in November 2000. What's wild is that major carriers initially rejected it, thinking absolutely no one would want a low-res camera on a phone. But J-Phone took a bet on it, launching their ShawMail photo emailing service. It was an overnight sensation. Suddenly, people weren't just texting about their day, they were showing it. The global selfie culture was officially born. Soon after, the focus pivoted hard toward aggressive productivity. Section 4, the Crackberry generation. Productivity obsession. Crackberry. Yeah, it was an actual widely used term. It perfectly captured that drug-like, highly addictive hold BlackBerry devices had on business professionals. If you walked into a coffee shop or rode a train in the mid-2000s, you just saw a sea of faces illuminated by those tiny screens. With that physical keyboard and the scrolling track wheel, push email made mobile productivity an outright obsession. You were always connected, always on the clock.
If we follow this evolutionary path, you can see exactly how BlackBerry transformed from a pager into the gold standard of mobile tech. Step 1. In 1998, RIM drops a two-way pager that ran for weeks on a single AA battery. Step 2. 2002, they finally add voice calling with the 5810, though hilariously you had to plug in a headset just to speak because it had no built-in microphone. And then step 3, in 2006, the Pearl 8100 hits. It swaps the clunky track wheel for a sleek trackball, adds a camera, and suddenly BlackBerry is a true pop culture icon. Okay, take a breath, because the entire paradigm is shifting right beneath our fingertips as we speak. Section 5, the AI smartphone era. Intelligence by 2026. We are moving incredibly fast away from clever hardware tricks and right into the realm of invisible intelligent software. Historically, phones relied heavily on massive cloud servers to do the heavy lifting for artificial intelligence. But by 2026, the entire market is pivoting. We're talking about dedicated neural processing units, or NPUs, delivering at least 30 tera operations per second directly on the device itself. Your phone literally becomes a self-contained, proactive brain. Think about the massive jump required in just a few short years. We are moving from a standard 2023 smartphone with 8 to 12 gigs of RAM up to AI smartphones needing 16 to 32 gigs by 2026. We're going from cloud-dependent processing to on-device NPUs. We're upgrading from basic manual photo filters to full-blown generative AI that can expand image borders or rewrite your emails instantly without even needing a Wi-Fi connection. The whole industry is shifting from hardware-focused pricing to being entirely software and service-focused. And that memory requirement is absolutely crucial. To process complex generative AI locally, entirely offline, devices require an absolute minimum of 16 gigabytes of RAM. That fundamentally changes the hardware baseline for the entire industry. You simply cannot run these advanced neural models on older tech. The phone literally needs a massive brain expansion to juggle real-time conversation summaries, live video lighting tweaks, and context-aware virtual assistants all at the exact same time. But here's the catch. Because massive AI data centers are currently eating up the global supply of DRAM memory, smartphone manufacturers are forced to adapt to rising production costs. It is a fierce, cutthroat competition for silicon. When both giant corporate data centers and the little phone in your pocket need the exact same high-bandwidth memory chips to run AI, a bottleneck is inevitable. So you can definitely expect the base price for these advanced 2026 devices to see an upward shift. So, where does all this raw processing power ultimately lead us? Section 6, the post-app future, intent-based computing. We are officially entering the era of intent-based computing. This is where a central AI essentially becomes the user interface itself, acting like a direct extension of your mind. Think about how you use your phone today. If you want dinner and a movie, you open a reservation app, then you open a theater app, then you open a map app. In 2026, you'll simply state your intent out loud to your AI. The assistant will automatically navigate all those backend APIs for you, executing complex multi-step operations instantly. That familiar grid of colorful app icons, it's slowly going to fade away. So, are we witnessing the end of the traditional app? It's a wildly profound shift in human history. It really leaves us to wonder how our fundamental relationship with technology is going to change when our devices finally start thinking for us. We've gone from a 3-pound brick that costs $12,000 to a pocket-sized intelligence that anticipates our every need before we even ask. Will we even recognize what a phone is 10 years from now? Keep your software updated and stay curious, because this AI revolution is quite literally already in your hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.